Maya Thompson, a woman of quiet grace and deep composure, boarded the private jet, her presence calm yet undeniable. She moved with purpose, her tailored black dress and soft gaze reflecting a quiet strength that wasn't always visible to those who assumed they knew her story. She had learned long ago that appearances didn't always tell the truth, and today, her journey was one of business, a path toward building something bigger than herself. The aircraft gleamed, its sleek body a testament to luxury. Inside, the plush leather seats and golden accents reflected wealth and exclusivity, but it wasn't the beauty of the plane that drew the attention. It was Maya's subtle elegance as she made her way to her seat. Unbeknownst to the others, she was the woman who owned this jet, this empire, though she preferred to keep it that way. Lauren, the flight attendant, was a woman of precision. She prided herself on maintaining an air of authority in her domain, the pristine uniform and crisp movements reinforcing her belief that control was her strongest suit. As she greeted passengers, her smile was warm for some, but it lost its luster when she came to Maya. Something about the woman unsettled Lauren, perhaps it was her calm demeanor or the way she refused to command attention. Lauren looked down at the passenger list and frowned. Maya didn't seem like she belonged here. With an air of superiority, Lauren approached. "Excuse me, I believe you're in the wrong section," she said, her tone cold and condescending. Maya looked up slowly, her expression serene, yet her gaze unwavering. "I believe this is my seat," she replied, her voice steady but firm. The flight attendant's irritation flickered, but Maya remained composed, not offering an ounce of resistance. Lauren, however, wasn't satisfied with this. She spoke louder now, her voice gaining an edge as she insisted, "This area is reserved for our VIPs. Please move to the back of the plane." Maya's response was measured and calm. "I'm not moving." The tension in the cabin mounted as passengers exchanged curious glances. A few whispered, unsure of what was happening, but Maya's composure remained unshaken. Her voice, though calm, carried a quiet strength that only served to frustrate Lauren further. The flight attendant pressed the issue, demanding security be called if necessary, but Maya, unfazed, continued to sit still. With every word, every slight, Lauren's frustration grew, but Maya's presence, strong and unyielding, didn't falter. She wasn't just standing her ground, she was showing something deeper, something Lauren couldn't understand. Respect isn't given, it's earned, and Maya had earned her place long before this moment. It wasn't about where she sat on the plane, it was about who she knew herself to be. In the end, it wasn't Maya's words that changed the course of the situation, but the quiet power in her presence. Lauren, who had underestimated her, was forced to reckon with the fact that confidence and self-assurance don't always demand a fight, they simply stand firm, no matter the storm. Olivia Brooks, a poised and reserved woman in her mid-30s, boarded the private jet, her presence understated yet powerful. Clad in a simple yet elegant dress, she moved with quiet confidence, her calm demeanor creating an aura of dignity that seemed to set her apart from the usual luxury travelers. Olivia wasn't just another passenger on this flight, she was a successful businesswoman, one who had built her empire through years of hard work and resilience. Yet, as she made her way to her seat, no one knew her true identity. For now, she preferred it that way. As Olivia settled into her seat, the flight attendants, including the lead stewardess, Claire, began their rounds. Claire, with her meticulously arranged hair and crisply pressed uniform, greeted the passengers with a smile that could charm anyone. But as she reached Olivia's row, her smile faltered. Olivia's unassuming nature seemed to irk Claire, who prided herself on knowing exactly who belonged in the premium section and who didn't. It was in the way Claire looked at Olivia, dismissing her based on little more than her understated elegance. She couldn't understand how someone so quiet, so humble, could possibly belong in this exclusive part of the plane. Claire's attitude shifted as she moved down the aisle. With a friendly smile, she greeted a returning passenger, Mr. and Mrs. Carson, seasoned travelers who exuded wealth with every move they made. Claire's tone became warmer, more genuine. Her demeanor, once professional but distant, now reflected a clear bias toward those who appeared worthy of respect. But when her eyes fell upon Olivia once again, her warm smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, almost dismissive glance. Olivia, however, remained composed, her gaze steady as she observed Claire's behavior. It was clear that Claire had decided that Olivia, despite her calm demeanor and refined appearance, didn't belong. And yet, Olivia never responded to the judgment. She didn't have to. She knew that true worth wasn't defined by outward appearances but by the character one carried within. As the flight progressed, Olivia felt the subtle shift in the atmosphere, Claire's behavior toward her growing more distant, her courtesy less genuine. Olivia's patience, however, never wavered. She knew that the prejudices others held were a reflection of their own limitations, not hers. In the quiet spaces between the polite exchanges and the whispers of judgment, Olivia's strength grew. She didn't need to prove her worth to anyone. The subtle discrimination she faced from Claire only served to deepen her conviction that class distinction and prejudice were nothing more than fleeting illusions. By the end of the flight, Olivia stood up, calm and composed, ready to continue her journey. Claire, watching her from a distance, couldn't help but feel the weight of her assumptions. Olivia had remained unshaken, her quiet grace a powerful reminder that true dignity comes from within, regardless of how others choose to judge you. Sophia Harris, a composed and quiet woman in her early 40s, sat calmly in her seat on the private jet, her presence almost serene amidst the luxury surrounding her. She had always carried herself with an air of understated elegance, a trait that had served her well in business, where she was a respected entrepreneur. But as she settled into her seat, she felt the faintest shift in the air, something was different. A subtle tension seemed to simmer beneath the surface, and she couldn't help but sense the judgment coming from the flight attendant. Claire, the lead flight attendant, was efficient, polished, and proud of the control she held over the cabin. She moved through the aisles with precision, greeting each passenger with a warm smile, but when her gaze landed on Sophia, the warmth quickly faded. There was something about Sophia's quiet confidence, her understated style, that seemed to unsettle Claire. It wasn't immediately obvious, but as Claire moved through the cabin, she couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia didn't belong in the first-class section. Perhaps it was the fact that Sophia wasn't visibly flashy or demanding attention. But in Claire's mind, that only meant she wasn't deserving of the privileges that came with the premium seating. As Claire reached Sophia's row, she took a deep breath and addressed her with a cold tone, "Excuse me, ma'am, I believe you're sitting in the wrong section. This area is reserved for our elite passengers." Sophia looked up, her expression calm, and her voice even. "This is my seat," she replied simply. But Claire wasn't satisfied. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Sophia's unassuming attire and composed demeanor. "I'm going to have to ask you to move to the back of the plane," she said, her tone sharp and commanding. "If you don't, I will have to call security." The words hit the air like a spark, and a ripple of tension spread through the cabin. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging whispers. Some looked on with curiosity, while others averted their eyes, unsure of what to do. Sophia's calm didn't waver. "I'm not moving," she said, her voice steady but firm, her gaze unwavering. The atmosphere became thick with unspoken tension. Claire's irritation grew as she saw her authority being challenged. She raised her voice slightly, hoping to rally the support of the other passengers. "I've asked you nicely," she snapped. "Either you move, or I'll make sure security handles it." But still, Sophia remained unfazed. "Call them if you need to." "I have every right to stay in my seat," she said, her tone as composed as ever. The murmurs from the other passengers grew louder, but Sophia refused to be rattled. With every passing moment, the tension in the cabin grew heavier, the tension between authority and composure, between assumption and reality. Claire stood there, visibly frustrated, her control slipping away as Sophia's calmness became a quiet power. In that moment, it became clear that the true strength was not in force, but in the steady resolve of someone who knew exactly where they belonged. And Sophia wasn't about to let anyone make her question that. Emma Williams, a quiet and dignified woman in her early 40s, sat calmly in her seat aboard the luxurious private jet. She had the kind of quiet confidence that people often overlooked until it was too late. Her attire was simple but elegant, her demeanor poised and calm. Emma had worked tirelessly to build her own successful business empire, and this flight was just another stop on a journey to further her ventures. Yet, as she settled in, she could already feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere, a judgmental gaze from one of the flight attendants, Sarah. Sarah, the lead flight attendant, prided herself on her ability to read passengers and maintain control in the cabin. Her sharply pressed uniform and perfectly coiffed hair gave off an air of authority, but it was clear she reserved a special brand of respect for the more conspicuously wealthy passengers. When she approached Emma's seat, Sarah's smile was stiff and forced, almost condescending. Her eyes lingered on Emma, trying to read her, to determine if she belonged in the first-class section. "Excuse me, ma'am," Sarah said, her voice polite but cold. "I believe this seat is for our elite passengers. You may want to move to the back of the plane." Emma raised an eyebrow, her calm gaze unwavering. "I'm not moving," she replied simply, her voice composed. The tension in the cabin grew, as passengers began to sense the clash of wills. Whispers spread across the aisle, some murmuring about the situation unfolding before them. Sarah, visibly irritated by Emma's defiance, took a deep breath, her patience starting to wear thin. "You need to move," Sarah repeated, her tone growing more insistent. "I'm warning you, if you don't, I'll have security escort you off this plane." Emma's response remained unchanged, her voice firm but gentle. "I have every right to stay here. If you need to call security, feel free." The atmosphere in the cabin was charged now, the passengers' eyes darting between the two women. They could feel the tension rising, the escalating conflict becoming more palpable with each passing moment. But Emma stood her ground, unfazed by the growing hostility. In a moment that no one saw coming, Sarah's frustration boiled over. She took a step forward, her eyes flashing with anger. Without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Emma across the face. The sound echoed through the cabin like a sharp crack, and the room fell into stunned silence. Emma's cheek reddened from the force of the slap, but her composure remained unbroken. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. She simply sat there, her expression as calm as ever, her gaze steady on Sarah. The passengers around them sat frozen, unsure of how to react. Emma slowly straightened in her seat, her eyes meeting Sarah's. "You just made a mistake," she said quietly, her voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the room. Sarah's anger lingered in the air, but for the first time, she hesitated. Emma's unflinching composure, her quiet strength, had shattered the tension in a way that words could never have done. In that moment it was clear that true power wasn't in physical aggression, it was in the ability to remain calm, even when faced with such blatant hostility. And Emma had proven, in a single, unshaken moment, that her strength could not be broken. Sophia Carter, a composed and dignified woman, had spent her life learning how to navigate the world with quiet strength. As she settled into her seat aboard the luxurious private jet, her calm, unassuming presence seemed to fill the space around her. She wasn't someone who needed to demand attention, her elegance and confidence spoke for themselves. Yet, today, she found herself facing a situation that would test her patience and her resolve. The flight attendant, Claire, had been polite to most of the passengers, offering smiles and warm greetings. But when Claire came to Sophia's row, something shifted. Her greeting was cold, her tone clipped. Claire glanced at the seat assignment with a furrowed brow, her gaze lingering on Sophia, as if questioning her right to be there. "I believe you're sitting in the wrong section," Claire said, her voice laced with condescension. "This area is reserved for our VIP guests. Please move to the back of the plane." Sophia raised an eyebrow, her expression calm but firm. "I'm not moving," she replied simply, her voice unwavering. Claire's smile faltered, and she pressed the issue. "I'm afraid you'll have to move. If you don't, I'll have to call security." The tension in the air thickened, and passengers nearby began to whisper among themselves, unsure of what was happening. Sophia's eyes remained steady as she looked at Claire. "You're making a mistake," she said softly, her words carrying a weight that could not be ignored. "I don't belong in the back of the plane. And I suggest you think carefully about what you're doing." The words hung in the air, as Claire's expression shifted from frustration to confusion. She could feel the power of Sophia's calm, but there was something more beneath the surface. Claire's discomfort was palpable as she realized that Sophia wasn't just another passenger, there was more to her than met the eye. As the tension in the cabin grew, Sophia finally allowed the slightest smile to play at the corner of her lips. She leaned forward just slightly, her gaze never leaving Claire's. "You're not just making a mistake about me," Sophia continued, her voice cool and controlled. "You've made the worst mistake of your life." At those words, Claire faltered. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The passengers around them, who had been observing in silence, now shifted in their seats. Some exchanged uncertain glances, while others tried to pretend they hadn't noticed. But it was clear that Sophia's composed response had changed the dynamic in the room. Sophia, calm as ever, allowed the weight of her statement to settle in the air before adding one final, subtle hint: "I suggest you check your passenger list again." The shift in the cabin was immediate. The atmosphere, once thick with tension, now felt heavier. Claire, who had assumed the role of authority, now seemed uncertain, her confidence waning. The passengers, once unsure of where to place their loyalty, were now left questioning Claire's position and her judgment. Sophia's quiet strength had turned the tables. In a single, composed moment, she had shifted the balance of power, and no one in the cabin would ever see her the same way again. The calm confidence she carried wasn't just about her appearance or status, it was about the unshakable belief that no one could define her worth except herself. Lena Mitchell, a woman of quiet power and unshakable resolve, had always carried herself with grace. She had worked hard to build her reputation and her empire, but she never flaunted it. Today, as she sat in her seat on the private jet, dressed in an understated yet elegant suit, she felt a sense of calm. Little did she know, the journey ahead would soon test her patience. The lead flight attendant, Victoria, had been cordial with the other passengers, but when she reached Lena's seat, there was an unmistakable shift in her demeanor. Victoria's smile was tight, her words polite but cold. "Excuse me, ma'am. This section is reserved for our elite passengers," she said, her gaze lingering on Lena for a moment too long, clearly judging her based on appearances. "I'm afraid you'll need to move to the back of the plane." Lena raised an eyebrow, unfazed by the condescending tone. "This is my seat," she replied simply, her voice firm but calm. The tension in the cabin was immediate. Victoria's eyes narrowed, and her voice grew more insistent. "You'll have to move now, or I will have security escort you off the plane," she said, her words ringing louder in the silence that had fallen over the passengers. Lena didn't flinch. She didn't need to raise her voice or make a scene. Her quiet confidence and composure spoke volumes. "I'm not moving," she said, her voice unwavering. "You may call security if you wish." Victoria's irritation flared, but Lena's calm authority only unsettled her further. As the tension built, Lena decided it was time to speak up. "Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn," she said softly, her words carrying a quiet but powerful weight. "And you've already made a grave mistake by assuming you know who I am." The cabin was silent for a moment, the weight of Lena's statement settling in the air. The other passengers exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the shift in power. Some had been unsure about which side to take, but now, they could feel the undeniable strength of Lena's presence. Victoria stood frozen, her control slipping as she realized the gravity of her actions. But she refused to back down. As the situation escalated, Grace, a junior flight attendant, discreetly stepped aside and reached for her phone, dialing for assistance. She knew something wasn't right, and she feared the consequences if this situation wasn't handled carefully. Lena, with her calm and composed demeanor, could see the fear in Grace's eyes. She gave a subtle nod, acknowledging the tension, but her eyes never left Victoria. "You've crossed a line," Lena said quietly. "And now, you will have to deal with the consequences." The passengers watched in stunned silence as the situation continued to unfold. The once commanding presence of Victoria now seemed fragile, and it was clear that her actions had ignited a shift that she wasn't prepared for. What do you think of this situation? How would you handle it if you were in Lena's shoes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this.